The studio lights were blinding, the applause pre-programmed. Meghan Markle stepped onto the real-time set with her usual elegance white suit. Subtle heels, composed smile. Camera zoomed in, capturing the grace, the polish, the global symbol of both controversy and calm. Bill Maher, sitting with crossed legs and that familiar smirk, gestured to the chair opposite him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the Duchess of Disruption." Meghan smiled, but it was tight, controlled. Her team had warned her. Maher was unpredictable, sharp-tongued, and often took pleasure in cutting through celebrity narratives. But Meghan had insisted on doing the show. "If I can't speak unscripted," she'd told her team earlier that week, "I'm not speaking at all." The first few minutes went smoothly. Bill threw out his usual jabs. "So, how's life? In the exile of Montecito?" he joked. "Miss the crown or just the castle?" Meghan responded gracefully, laughing lightly and saying, "Let's just say my backyard doesn't come with courtiers." But the tone changed quickly. Maher leaned in, voice lower now, with a glint of something more calculated. "But really, Meghan," he said, "don't you think people are tired of hearing how hard it is to be rich? It's beautiful and slightly inconvenienced by fame." There was laughter from the audience, but short. Meghan didn't laugh. She paused, then looked at Maher straight in the eyes. "I don't think people are tired of empathy," she said. "I think they're tired of cynicism, pretending to be clever." That line landed like a crack in a glass. Audible gasps followed. Maher tried to recover, but she had shifted the balance. Now she was leading. He went on the offensive, trying to pin contradictions from past interviews: privacy versus public life, victimhood versus influence. "Isn't it like yelling 'Leave me alone' through a megaphone?" he asked. Meghan's voice lowered. "Privacy doesn't mean silence, Bill. It means consent. What I choose to share, not what you decide to take." The air in the studio was different, now heavier. The laughter had stopped. Maher was still pushing. "Come on. At some point, criticism is just accountability. Not everything is sexism or racism." Meghan leaned forward, calmly. "Criticism becomes cruelty when it targets who you are, not what you do," she said. "And if you can't see that, maybe you're part of the problem you keep mocking." A slow murmur swept through the crowd. Maher shifted in his seat. His face stiffened. Producers backstage moved nervously, some speaking into headsets. One of them whispered, "We should cut." But Meghan wasn't finished. "You've made a career out of punching down," she continued. "But how many of the women you mock have a platform to respond?" There was no laughter now, just a cold silence. Maher's eyes narrowed. "This isn't The View. We debate here." "You confuse debate with deflection," she said, "and I thought you might know the difference." The studio froze. Without waiting for a cue, Meghan stood up. Calm, dignified, final. "I've stood in worse heat than this," she said. "But I won't perform in a circus pretending to be a conversation." And just like that, she walked off stage. Cameras kept rolling. Maher sat still. The applause sign didn't light up. Across the country, in a secure facility buried beneath Arlington, Virginia, the feed cut in a cold steel room. Monitors lined the walls, streams from every major broadcast flowing in real time. An analyst sat up straight as a blinking alert popped on screen. "Classified trigger detected, level 7 Markle. Signal." He clicked the timestamp, rewound, played the line again. "I won't perform in a circus, pretending to be a conversation." The software flagged the sentence. Pattern match. 94% similarity. With archived material from a confidential operation codenamed Mirror Directive. The analyst adjusted his headset. "It's her," he whispered. "It's active again." No response, just a long pause. Then, from the far corner of the room, a deep voice replied, "Prepare a blackout sweep. No clips go viral. No trace. On social platforms." Another voice replied, "Too late, sir. It's already out there." And on millions of phones across the world, the moment Meghan walked out began to flood screens. No sound, just the look on her face, strong, sharp, and utterly unbothered. It was no longer just a TV moment. It was a signal. And someone, somewhere, had been waiting for it. The footage of Meghan Markle walking off real time with Bill Maher wasn't just viral, it was wildfire. Within hours, it had racked up millions of views, reposted by news anchors, reaction channels, feminist bloggers, and conspiracy theorists alike. Everyone had a take. But beneath the surface, something else stirred in an underground briefing room at a satellite intelligence center in Brussels. A senior EU official watched the clip with narrow eyes. On the screen, Meghan's final words echoed again. "I won't perform in a circus pretending to be a conversation." He leaned back in his chair. "Same phrasing as Nairobi, '09, he muttered. Across the table, a younger aide flipped. "Open a file thick, stamped with a red seal, archived Operation Sybil." She used the phrase almost verbatim, the aide said. Back then, it was used by that British journalist who went missing in Syria. The one who uncovered that joint surveillance program between GCHQ and the NSA. The room went quiet, so why is Markle using it now? The senior official asked. The aide hesitated. Either it's a coincidence, or someone handed her the line. The older man rubbed his forehead. "Reopen Sybil and get me Langley." Meanwhile, back in the States, Meghan sat in the back of a black SUV driving through Los Angeles. Her phone had been buzzing, nonstop calls, messages, alerts. Her team was panicked. But she stared out the tinted window, silent. Her advisor, Serena, sat beside her, tense. "Meg, we should have pulled out when the segment turned hostile." "I expected it to be hostile," Meghan said calmly. "Not like that," Serena snapped. "Now every agency from DC to Silicon Valley is watching you. That line, you used the line. You know what that triggers?" Meghan turned to her. "I didn't say it by accident." Serena looked at her, startled. "You remember?" Meghan's eyes narrowed. "I never forgot." The SUV turned sharply, entering a gated compound in the Hollywood Hills. Inside the house, secured and soundproofed, Meghan walked straight to a small private study. She opened a drawer, pulled out a hard drive. It was unlabeled, matte black. Worn at the edges, Serena followed, suddenly serious. "You kept it?" Meghan nodded. "Since Geneva." She plugged it into a laptop. Encrypted folders appeared instantly. Serena recognized the codenames, projects, dossiers, leaked surveillance logs, all tied to powerful interests that once tried to control the media narrative and failed. On the screen was a file labeled Circuit Break Level 7. As Meghan opened it, a video loaded, grainy, timestamped from 2012. In it, a woman nearly identical to Meghan, same poise, same eyes, stood on a conference stage in Nairobi, speaking to a room of international observers. Her voice echoed, "The circus only thrives when no one sees the strings. I will not perform for power disguised as truth." Serena whispered. "It wasn't you, but it looks like you." Meghan stared at the screen. "My mother told me once, we carry memory in our blood." Back in Brussels, the EU intelligence team was now on high alert. The files cross-referenced Meghan with redacted personnel records from several disbanded operations whistleblowers. Informants, ghost profiles. One name kept reappearing, Project Echo. And in Virginia, inside the Dark Media Monitoring Center. The analyst who first flagged the broadcast stood before a panel of shadowy figures. "Contractors, ex-intelligence agents. She's not just a celebrity," he said. "She's an eco-someone tied to a deeper cycle. Every time a narrative collapses, she appears different form, same voice." The head officer spoke for the first time. "Activate clean frame protocols. No media beyond this week. Redirect the narrative and send someone to her." "Send? Who?" the analyst asked. The man smiled coldly. "Someone she already knows." Elsewhere, Meghan sat in the dark watching the old video loop again. A message popped up on her screen. Unknown sender. Do you remember Berlin? She stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, Yes, I remember everything now. Something ancient and unfinished had been set into motion. And this time it wouldn't be silenced. The news cycles had moved fast, but the tension behind the headlines hadn't eased. Meghan Markle's walkout had become a cultural fault line. Some saw defiance, others smelled conspiracy. But far from the headlines, something else was brewing. Something that had less to do with fame and more to do with secrets buried long before she ever married into royalty. Inside a quiet corner of the U.S. State Department, small intelligence committee gathered in a soundproof glass chamber known as the Frost Room. No phones, no transcripts, only verbal analysis. A tall woman in her 60s, silver hair, pulled into a tight braid, stood at the front. Her badge read Deputy Director Elise Ward. Markle's exact phrasing her tone. Her timing it wasn't spontaneous, Ward said. It was layered, deliberate. We ran her response through linguistic forensics. It matches speech patterns from 3 whistleblowers who vanished between 2008 and 2015. 3 different continents, different languages, same cadence. A younger analyst frowned. But Meghan's a celebrity, an actress. You're suggesting? She's been trained. Ward gave a tight nod. Trained or activated. Across the ocean, in an anonymous Berlin apartment, a man known only as Elias watched the clip of Meghan on a cracked laptop. The lights were off. A dog barked outside. He replayed the same 10 seconds over and over. Her final words on Bill Maher's set. I won't perform in a circus pretending to be a conversation. He had heard that sentence before, not just in Nairobi, but in Prague, 2009, from a woman who looked exactly like Meghan. But she had been identified only as Echo. Elias lit a cigarette, his hands shaking. He had tried to live a quiet life. No more dead drops, no more burner phones. But the moment Meghan said that line, something inside him snapped back into place. He opened a drawer. Inside, a single photo, yellowed with age. Meghan, or someone like her, standing beside a younger version of Elias, both holding folders marked Observer Trial. He picked up a satellite phone. This is Elias, he said quietly. She surfaced. Back in Los Angeles, Meghan sat in her study, Serena pacing nearby. The air was thick with old dust and newer fear. The hard drive still sat open, showing a series of classified files no one had touched in years. One video in particular caught Meghan's eye. File name, Mockingbird Prime Unedited. She opened it. A grainy recording showed a secret press room somewhere in Washington. Inside, figures sat behind a glass wall, feeding scripted questions to journalists. Word for word, 'twas the real machinery of media control. And Meghan realized something. Chilling, she had once stood in that room. Or someone who looked just like her had. Serena leaned in. This is what they tried to erase. Not just erase, Meghan whispered. Replace. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered and a calm voice spoke. You've opened the door, now they'll try to close it. Who is this? You don't know me yet, but I knew the first version of you, before the palace. Before the documentaries. Before you were, called Meghan, then the line went dead. Serena stared at her, terrified. What does that mean, the first version of you? Meghan's eyes slowly filled with something between recognition and dread. I think I've been living someone else's ending. Suddenly, every light in the house cut out. Complete blackout. Within seconds, backup generators clicked on. But it was enough to trigger a protocol Meghan hadn't used in years. She walked to a hidden wall panel and typed in a long-forgotten code. Behind it, a secured case, military grade. She opened it. Inside lay a worn leather folder, a second, encrypted hard drive, and an old photo of her as a child standing beside a woman who looked just like her mother, but not quite. Serena's voice shook. What is that? Meghan didn't look up. Proof that I was chosen, not just born. Outside, two unmarked black SUVs parked silently at the edge of the street. From inside, a man stepped out clean. Suit, dark gloves. Not paparazzi, not press operatives. He looked toward the house, raised a small device, activated it. Inside, Meghan's encrypted files began deleting themselves, one by one. She stared at the screen. They're already trying to erase the truth. Serena grabbed her arm. Then we leave. Now, no, Meghan said firmly. We finish it.
Okay.
Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't just part of the narrative. She was holding the original draft. And someone was terrified. She'd read it out loud. A light rain had begun to fall over Los Angeles by midnight. Meghan stood by the window of her private study, staring through the droplets on the glass as the black SUVs slowly drove off. For now, the immediate danger had passed, but she knew better than to relax. Surveillance wouldn't come loudly next time. It would be quiet, digital, invisible. Serena sat hunched over the second encrypted drive, trying to breach its protective shell without triggering its auto-wipe function. This thing's military grade. You're sure it's yours? Meghan didn't answer right away. Her eyes were still fixed outside. It was given to me in Ghana, a year before I met Harry, by a woman who said I was part of something. Unfinished. Serena looked up sharply. You never told me that. Couldn't, Meghan replied, her voice low. The moment I told anyone, it would have marked them too. Back in Berlin, Elias had begun to assemble what was left of the old network. Names, patterns, crossed-out agents. A decade ago. Mockingbird Prime had been a rumor among spies, a shadow program said to insert media personas into major cultural systems as tools of psychological conditioning. The operation was shuttered officially. Unofficially, it just changed names. Elias now believed Meghan wasn't just a former royal or actress. She was a legacy asset, one whose memory had been rewritten. He wasn't the only one watching. In London, a closed-door meeting was underway inside a private MI6 substation beneath the Thames. On-screen footage from Bill Maher's show slowed down. Frame by frame, Meghan's micro-expressions, eye movement. Breathing shifts. The agent presenting paused the video. This isn't normal stress response, he said. She's showing signs of trauma-triggered recall. A woman in uniform frowned. What? We don't know. But whatever it is, she didn't know she knew it until she said it. A hush fell across the room. Back in California, Serena finally bypassed the hard drive's firewall. Folder blinked open. Echo 01 redacted audio files. She played the first one. It began with static. Then a young girl's voice, clear, American, and unmistakably Meghan speaking words that didn't make sense for a child. If they come in the night, I'll say the code. Orchard Mirror 7. And I won't open my eyes until. The lights stopped pulsing. Serena's hands trembled. That's you. Meghan nodded slowly, eyes wide with memory, returning like waves crashing too fast. I remember, a basement. Cold, men in white coats. They called me the listener, said I could hear signals. No one else could. Her voice dropped. I thought it was a dream, but it wasn't. Serena looked at her with fear and awe. You were part of something before you ever knew who you were. Meghan stared at the screen. Naive. Spent years trying to erase it. Outside, the rain grew heavier. From a rooftop nearby, a lens glinted under the moonlight. A private contractor had been hired, not government, not corporate. Freelance surveillance. Meant someone with real money and a reason to stay invisible. Serena's laptop chimed again. A second folder had decrypted blackjack candidates. Operational roster, dozens of names. Some crossed out in red, others highlighted in blue. Serena scrolled. And there it was. Markle M, primary influence vector, active phase suspended, pending reset. Meghan's breath caught in her throat. They planned to reset me, Serena read aloud, voice hollow. Psychological deviation exceeds 14.6%. Initiate fallback narrative via media discreditation or character collapse. They were going to destroy your reputation if you ever remembered, she whispered. Meghan sat down hard in the chair. Everything suddenly made sense. The constant media attacks, the false headlines, the strategic public failures. It wasn't just press harassment. It was part of the program. Discredit, deactivate, replace. A new alert popped up on the screen. Trace detected, location compromised. Serena grabbed the drive. We have to go now. But Meghan didn't move. She looked instead at the old photo still lying on the desk, as a child next to a woman who wasn't quite her mother. She flipped it over. A phrase was handwritten on the back. Echoes never die. They just find new voices. Serena pulled her toward the door. We'll regroup in Vancouver. I have a contact someone off-grid. Meghan followed, but her eyes stayed on the words until they disappeared behind the door. As they drove into the night, a satellite somewhere above began tracking their car. Not U.S. military, not NATO. A private satellite, owned by a tech company whose board included 3 names from the blackjack candidates list. One of them, a powerful media mogul who had interviewed Meghan before Weissend, now had reason to bury her truth at any cost. The story was no longer just hers. It was about the world that created her, and the one that was scared to death of what she might reveal next. In the quiet mountains outside Vancouver, a storm was building, not just in the skies, but between memory and reality. Meghan and Serena arrived just before dawn, their vehicle mud-splattered and nearly out of gas. They parked behind an old cedar cabin barely visible from the winding forest road. The contact Serena mentioned, a reclusive former intelligence coder named Owen, was already waiting at the door, holding a steaming mug and scanning the tree line. You weren't followed, he said flatly, more confirmation than question. But your signal bounced off at least 5 illegal satellites in the last 2 hours. Whatever you tripped wasn't small. Inside, the cabin looked more like a Cold War data vault than a home. Servers hummed under thermal blankets. Paper maps were pinned to the walls, marked with satellite paths and news broadcast patterns. Owen didn't ask many questions. He knew. Serena, and that was enough. What he wanted was the data, the echo drive. Meghan handed it over, and for the next 6 hours, Owen disappeared into his console, typing with surgical speed. Serena tried to sleep. Meghan couldn't. Instead, she sat in the corner, listening again to the recordings of her childhood voice, each one a breadcrumb from a life she'd been programmed to forget. Memories were returning in fragments, whispers inflorescent. Rooms, white walls, strange lullabies in foreign tongues. A soft voice saying, she has the pattern. They'll follow her until it's done. At midday, Owen finally spoke. This isn't just about you, he said. The blackjack candidates list. It's a map of influence operatives, planted media personalities, rising political figures, controlled disruptions, all of them, activated through public humiliation or breaking point events. You were one of the first, but not the only one. He flipped his screen. Dozens of faces appeared, some familiar, some shocking. A globally beloved pop star who vanished for health reasons at the peak of her career. A congressman recently accused of corruption whose trial was televised for weeks before collapsing due to lost evidence. An activist journalist found dead in Istanbul, officially suicide. But the file labeled him Echo Comms, disrupted, terminated. Serena leaned in, stunned. They've been manipulating entire narratives by controlling the people who create them and destroying them once they break script, Owen added. Meghan whispered, so the media storm around me. That was part of the control. Yes, Owen said. But it failed. Meghan looked at him. You weren't supposed to walk off that set. You were supposed to self-destruct, lose credibility, spiral, disappear. Instead, you triggered a signal that hasn't been heard since 2003. What was the last one? Serena asked. Owen hesitated. Baghdad, embedded journalist. She exposed a covert U.S.-British peace ops network on air. 2 days later, she disappeared in crossfire, but not before triggering Echo Protocol. And what happened to the program? Meghan asked. Officially disbanded. Unofficially, it went private. Think defense contractors. Think Silicon Valley. Think people who want to control not governments, but emotions, culture, trust itself. A heavy silence settled. Outside, snow began to fall. Then a ping. Owen stiffened. They found us. A live feed from a satellite showed a drone's thermal image approaching fast. Not military, private. Owen's voice turned sharp. We've got maybe 10 minutes. Meghan stood. What do they want? Not the files, Owen said. You. But why me? Owen looked at her with something close to awe. Because your voice carries a pattern, some kind of resonance in your speech, your presence. It affects sentiment in unpredictable ways. They think you can shift public mood by just being seen. That makes you a threat to the systems designed to control opinion. Serena grabbed her bag. We need to split. But Meghan was staring at a live broadcast feed on Owen's screen. It was a press conference in D.C. The president's chief of staff was responding to a sudden leak of classified surveillance programs, a journalist shouted. Is it true the NSA was monitoring public figures under the name Echo? The man didn't answer. Then another voice echoed across the room. Live. CNN sources say a former royal has been linked to the leak. A photo appeared. Meghan, not from today, from years ago. Smiling, carefree. The headline, Stucci's tied to global influence breach. White House silent. Meghan stared. They're turning it back on me. They have to, Owen said. Because if the public sees you as a threat, they'll never believe you're the target. Serena cursed under her breath. We have to get this footage out and cut, unfiltered. Let people hear the truth. Owen opened a secure node. We go full blackout. Pirate stream, no trace. But once you speak, there's no going back. Meghan nodded slowly. Then let them hear me. As the drone circled above, ready to strike, a signal went live broadcast from a buried relay, spreading across servers, mirrors, encrypted relays. The title flashed across millions of screens. ECHO, the voice they tried to erase, and Meghan spoke. Not as royalty, not as a victim, but as someone who remembered. The broadcast hit the internet like a bullet through glass. Every social media platform began to flood with hashtags. Hashtag Echo Leak. Hashtag Meghan Signal. Hashtag the voice they erased. Within 12 minutes, the video was banned in 8 countries. By 20 minutes, multiple mirror uploads had replaced it. Within the hour, it reached 76 million views. But the real chaos began behind the curtain. Inside a sleek underground control room just outside Langley, Virginia, a panel of intelligence officials stood staring at a silent screen. At its center was a still frame of Meghan Markle, speaking into a camera, face calm, voice clear. She just blew the entire Echo protocol wide open, one agent whispered. Across the room, a woman in a navy suit barked into a headset, I want asset tracking on every node that touched that stream. We shut it down, we discredit it, or we replace it. The director, a stern older man with the hollow calm of someone who's buried too many truths, simply said, no, we activate the fallback. He turned to the wall and flipped a key switch. A new screen lit up. Project Ether, psychological realignment framework. She's already trending above threat. Level 5, he said. We won't stop this with censorship. We stop it with noise, confuse, overwhelm, divide. Meanwhile, deep in an abandoned Cold War-era listening station in Iceland, Meghan, Serena, and Owen had relocated. The mountains outside looked endless and white, but they knew time was shrinking fast. 3 assassination plots already. Serena asked, reading an intercepted message feed. They're not subtle. They're not trying to be, Owen said. They're trying to make it look like chaos, blame AI, hackers, radicals, anything but the truth. Meghan sat in front of an old transmitter rig, face lit by static screens. She was reviewing a message someone sent her just after the leak. Went live, it was a voice note. From someone who shouldn't have been able to reach her. Her mother. Except it wasn't recent. It was from 1997. A girl's voice, Meghan's crying. A woman's voice whispering, "If you ever find this, it means you broke free. Listen closely. They'll try to rewrite everything, even me. Trust no broadcast, only the pattern." Serena walked over slowly. That sounds like a trigger code. Owen nodded. Not just a message. It's an auditory marker. Recorded it, embedded something deeper. Audio watermarking that only shows when played in certain frequencies. He ran the file through his analog decoder. The waveform shifted. Letters appeared, a name, a location, a date. Meghan's eyes widened. That's not random. That's London. Tomorrow, the Tower Bridge. What's happening there? Serena asked. Owen hesitated. That's the annual closed-door summit for the Five Eyes Coalition. Intelligence heads from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And they'll all be there, Meghan asked, unless something stops them or exposes them. Meghan looked at Serena. That's where this ends. You sure? Serena asked. It's because walking into that meeting is like walking into a lion's mouth. No, Meghan said. It's walking into the center of the web. They think I'm still playing defense. But we don't have an invitation, Owen warned. And there's no way in. We don't go through the front, Meghan said. We go through their shadow. She pointed to the footage they'd just decrypted. Back in Virginia, the agency director stared at his monitor, watching data surge. She's going to London, he said. Move Phantom Cell into position and spin the narrative. Within hours, headlines across every major platform began to shift. Ex-Royale tied to global cyber disruption, terrorist threat, or tech hoax. Anonymous claims Meghan Markle is not who she says she is. A full-scale character assassination had begun. But something strange happened. Instead of turning the public against her, it splintered the trust in mainstream coverage entirely. People weren't retreating from her story. They were digging deeper. Subreddits formed overnight with timelines, documents, voice matches. Old footage was reanalyzed. Some viewers claimed to detect low-frequency pulses in her real-time interview signals. That matched known echo triggers. Even skeptics began to ask, what if this isn't just a media stunt? By the time Meghan boarded the train to London under an assumed identity, her image had become a symbol, not of fame. Not even of resistance, but of awakening. In the seat across from her, Serena was silent, scanning her notes. Owen, on an encrypted line in Iceland, warned them. London is red. London woke under a low gunmetal sky. The Tower Bridge stood silent, guarded more heavily than ever before. Tactical units in plain clothes lined rooftops. Drones moved like birds above the city. Traffic was blocked for miles. Inside the secured briefing hall beneath the Thames, the Five Eyes Coalition had gathered 47 officials, 12 from the U.S. alone. They had come expecting a crisis debrief. Instead, they were about to become part of the broadcast. At 9:04 a.m., the lights inside the briefing chamber flickered. Then the screens turned black. A single sentence appeared. The script is broken. And then her face, Meghan. But not from a live camera. Not exactly. This was a preloaded feed from a remote relay in Iceland, triggered on a timer, bypassing all local networks. The room locked automatically, as if anticipating betrayal. Was raised on stories, her voice said calmly, filling the room. Fairy tales, interviews, documentaries. Every version of my life was told by someone else. Today, I'm telling mine. The feed cut to raw footage, her as a child in a government-run learning lab. A place once marked classified by 3 nations. You called it Project Harpsichord. You said it was about influence, public trust, behavioral trends. But it was control. Images flashed of 8 other children, 2 now politicians, 1 now dead, 1 whose face was blurred. You didn't just raise us. You programmed us. You made us brands, movements, distractions. And when we stepped out of line, you rewrote us. It's in a small monitoring room deep inside MI6 headquarters. The director stood still. The technician beside him whispered, "It's broadcasting live to 32 countries. Someone embedded it into international satellite bandwidth." Another added, "We can't stop it. She's gone darknet global." Back inside the secure chamber, several officials tried to stand, but the doors remained locked. Panic settled into discomfort. No one wanted to be the first to speak. The footage cut again, this time to Meghan's interview with Bill Maher. Every moment had been slowed down, broken down, analyzed with frequency spectrums. When she responded to Maher's most cynical question, the screen pulsed, highlighting an invisible sonic waveform that had triggered her memory. "You triggered me," she said, her voice layered with a digital hum now. "And when I woke up, I realized I was never alone. Millions of us grew up in the noise, the lies, the signals. But I was the first to remember where the signal came from." She looked directly into the camera. Her tone shifted. "Not a palace, not a show. A room like this one. Full of people who think the truth is a threat." The screen went black. Then another message appeared in white. "This is not a leak. This is an unedited memory." In the Icelandic bunker, Serena and Owen watched the world react. Twitter broke. Newsrooms split in half. Some called it a PSY op. Others called it the beginning of a revolution. Meanwhile, people on the streets began to march. In Nairobi, in Manila, in Sao Paulo, in Paris, even in Washington, where Congress was forced into emergency session as protesters projected hashtag "Remember this" signal across the Capitol dome. Serena turned to Meghan, who sat quietly at the edge of the room, wrapped in a blanket, pale but calm. "You did it," Meghan shook her head. "No, I just remembered out loud. They did the rest." In London, one final moment played on the screen. A recovered voice recording dated 1998. The original handler. Male. Cold. She's remembering too fast. If she starts to ask about her real mother, initiate the MK loop. Scramble the attachment data. Set her pain threshold high enough to redirect. Then silence. Then her mother's voice, again softer, determined. "They can't kill what we planted in her. Even if they wipe her memory, it will live in the rhythm of her voice, in the breath between her words." Back in Virginia, the agency director sat at his desk, alone. He picked up the red phone, pressed a single button, spoke 5 words. "She has breached the narrative." His voice trembled for the first time in his career. In the hours that followed, governments issued vague statements. Some denied the video. Some claimed it was AI-generated. But others began to fracture. 2 intelligence officers resigned in Canada. 1 parliament member in the UK requested a public hearing. And in New York, at a quiet press conference, Serena stepped forward and presented the unedited hard drive to the world press. No lawyer, no studio, just the truth. A week later, Meghan appeared again, this time through a private live stream, speaking to a stadium of students in Johannesburg. "I am not a victim of the system," she said. "I was its mirror, but now I choose to be its echo breaker." The crowd rose in thunder, because no matter how much noise the world made, people could still hear the pattern. The lie had cracked. And once a lie cracks, it doesn't matter how old it is or how deep it runs. truth is louder. Even in whispers.